Hi, good morning. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. So for today, we will be having our first lesson for Jed 1, Understanding the Self. Again, this is your teacher, Irish. For Jed 1, Understanding the Self, we will be learning the lesson 1, which is the philosophical view of self. There are many philosophical view of self, but this time we will be having our discussion about Socrates, René Descartes, Plato, Immanuel Kant, John Locke, and David Hume. So let us first discuss about Socrates. So Socrates is actually known for this quote, "Know thyself." Honestly, this phrase or quote is not invented by Socrates himself. This is a motto inscribed in the front piece of the Temple of Delphi. This assertion is imperative in form, and it indicates that man must stand and live according to his nature. Man has to look at himself, and a bad man is not virtuous through ignorance. The man who does not follow good fails to do because he does not recognize it. Now, this particular phrase or quote, "Know thyself," which was known because of Socrates, this is an assertion that could actually say anything about yourself. So a man should know his or himself to make sure that he will be able to look or to look for himself. Like for example, he must know what he is, what he believes in, what are his philosophies in life, and other things about himself. Because in that way, he will be able to make sure that that he or she can help himself. So from Socrates, or in the Socratic ethics, the concept of virtue and knowledge is the core of Socratic ethics. So virtue is the deepest and most basic propensity of man. So knowing one's own virtue is necessary and can be learned. Since virtue is innate in the mind and self-knowledge is the source of all wisdom, an individual may gain possession of oneself and be one's own master through knowledge. So, according to Socrates, it is important that we know or we have this virtue and knowledge. Because virtue can actually be acquired or learned, while the knowledge is innate to us. So, it is important that we gain more knowledge or more wisdom about ourselves. In that way, we will be able to gain the possession of ourselves. We can be our own master. Because sometimes if you are not really that literate, or if you don't know anything about yourself, others will just use you. So, diba, you can actually see this a lot in like television stories or whatnot, that if a person doesn't know himself more, or if his knowledge is not really that much, so there are tendencies na dali lang sila iladon. So for Socrates, it is important that we have the virtue and the knowledge. Next is Plato. So Plato believes in this one, the ideal self, the perfect self. So for him, a man was omniscient or all-knowing before he came to be born in this world. So with this separation from the paradise of truth and knowledge and his long exile on earth, he forgot most of the knowledge he had. However, by constant remembering through contemplation and doing good, he can regain his former perfection. So Plato believed that human being or a man is actually perfect before. So he believed that even before we are born in this world, we are already perfect. It's just that because we stay in this world for a long time, we tend to forget or forgot the knowledge that we already had. And in that instances, that is the time that we are not called perfect. But however, if ever, for example, we are starting to remember those things, like we are doing good things and a lot of good deeds, then we can regain our former perfection. He also believed that man who is now an exile on earth has a guiding star, a model, or a divine exemplar which he must follow to reach and attain his destiny. So according to Plato, human being or tayo, we have our own guiding star. So that guiding star is our model or our exemplar or our example, wherein for us to be able to get the former perfection that we have is we need to follow that star, or we need to follow that model. And also Plato believed that in practical terms, actually, this means that man in this life should imitate his former self or the perfect self, and then more specifically, he should live a life of virtue in which true human perfection exists. Happiness, which is the fruit of virtue, is embodied in man's former perfect self. So para kay Plato, or in practical term, para kay Plato, we need to actually copy or imitate our previous self, the perfect self. So he is actually believing on the ideal perfection. So since he believed that persons or human beings are perfect before, then we need to actually make sure that we are able to imitate that. How we will be able to imitate that is that he said we need to contemplate and we need to do good things. In that way, we will be able to live happily and we gain happiness. The next philosopher is Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is on this quote, respect for self. So man is the only creature who governs and directs himself and his actions, who sets up ends for himself and his purpose, and who freely orders means for the attainment of his aims. So according to Immanuel Kant, only humans, or us humans, we are the only creature who has the ability to govern ourselves, to choose freely on what we want to do. So we have freedom. We are not like the animals na kanang they just follow their instinct of like eating, kasi yun lang naman talaga kadalasan yung nasa isip ng mga animals or ng mga hayop. Well, as humans, we have actually our own purpose. We have actually our own minds that we can freely choose on what we do and what we should not do. So meron tayong fina-follow. And then every man is or thus an end in himself and should never be treated merely as a means, as per the order of the Creator and the natural order of things. So for him, diba, he believed that we have freedom, or we are a free persons na kanang pwede ta magpili or pwede nating piliin kung ano yung mga gusto nating gawin. And then it's not about following the order of the Creator and the order of things or the norms. So para sa kanya, norms is not really the most important thing for human. It should be our freedom. So free to choose what we want to do. Next is René Descartes. So René Descartes is also known about I think, therefore I am. I'm sorry. For him, that is, I'm responsible. So this particular quote of I think, therefore I am, he believes that what you actually think is what you really are. So he states that the self is a thinking entity distinct from the body. So his first famous principle was cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. Although the mind and the body are independent of each other and serve their own function, man must use his own mind and thinking abilities to investigate, analyze, experiment, and develop himself. So for him, we have our separate, or we have our mind thinking ability, which is distinct from all the other parts of our body. So this particular thing about our mind is that we can think of ourselves, and then in that thinking abilities we can actually do it, the science of teaching, like for example the investigation, analyzing, experimenting, and developing our own self. Next is John Locke. So John Locke holds that personal identity, or the self, is a matter of psychological continuity. So for him, personal identity is founded on consciousness, or our memory, not on the substance of either the soul or the body. So he believed that we are, or as people, we are actually like, we have our own personal identity, but it should always be from our consciousness or on our memory. So he believed that it is not about the soul or even our human body. It would be our psychological thinking, in our psycho or psychological. He also believed that personal identity is the concept about oneself that evolves over the course of an individual's life. So it may include aspects of life that man has no control over, such as where he grew up, the color of his skin, as well as the choices he makes, like how he spends his time and what he believes. So in John Locke, actually, he believed that our personal identity, or our personal being, is developed not just with our personal, not just with our individual self, but also it is because of the environmental factors, like for example, about where we grow up, what type of community we live in, or even our heredity we're in, like the color of our skin or whatnot. So that's according to John Locke. And then next is David Hume. So David Hume, he is skeptical about the existence of the self, specifically whether there is a simple, unified self that exists over time. For him, man has no clear and intelligible idea of the self. He possesses that no single impression of existence, rather the self is just the thing or to which all perceptions of a man are ascribed. So, for him, So for him, the idea of self is about perception. So it's like all the perceptions of people, either your own perception or the perceptions of other people, it will be unified as one, and that will be your self. So moreover, even if there were such an impression of the self, it would have to remain constant over time to constitute identity. However, man's impression vary and always change. So even attempts to have impressions of the self must fail, for all these attempts are really just occasions for one to notice perception. To put it simply, a person can never observe oneself without some other perceptions. Thus, Hume asserts that we call the self is really just a bundle or collection of different perceptions which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity. So just like what I've mentioned earlier, it is, for him, it is a bundle of perception. So tenant perception about yourself will be added, and then that will be yourself. So dili siya constant. So it will have changes.